Aside from being the epitome of the stereotypical superhero, Superman has long been associated as being an ubermensch of sorts, a version of masculinity that should be strived for. While that is questionable at best by today's standards, Superman still manages to have a whole lot of sex appeal. Even though Lois Lane is arguably his OTP, this character has knocked boots with a few other superpowered individuals over the years, who can't deny his handsome charms. So today we are taking a closer look at his romantic past with our list of the top 10 superheroes Superman has hooked up with. Starting us off in at number 10, Big Barda. Let's begin our list with a comical romp of a relationship between Superman and Big Barda. In Action Comics issue 593, Superman was almost in a porno with Barda. Not even joking. The story in the issue, titled The Suicide Snare, begins with Darkseid sitting in his living room with a stiff drink, informing Mr. Miracle and Oberon that Big Barda has been up to no good. He then shows them a tape, which we never see play on panel, of her starring in an adult film, pleasuring Darkseid's old lackey, Sleaze. Of course, fitting name. Meanwhile, Sleaze takes a mind-controlled Barda and Superman to an adult film director named Grossman to make a porno starring the two heroes. Sleaze wants to use the film to make money so he can buy an army to get revenge on his former boss. Mr. Miracle ends up walking in on the shoot, encountering Grossman telling Superman that he has the sex appeal of a side of beef. Ouch. That's definitely gotta hurt the ego. But I mean, if you're the Man of Steel, like, can your ego really take a hit like that? You just brush that shit off. In at number 9, Lyla Lerrol. In Superman issue 141 from 1960, Superman ends up flying through a time barrier, letting himself in a year sometime before Krypton exploded. How this whole experience wasn't more traumatizing for him is beyond us, although Silver Age, so… Anywho, he begins to lose his powers and finds himself trapped on the planet. And when he's wandering around, he discovers a spaceship. Turns out this ship is actually part of a movie set of a sci-fi film being produced by a Kryptonian production company. He walks onto the set, ends up in the film, and meets an actress named Lyla Lerrol, one of Krypton's most famous movie starlets. They end up popping some pills together and then find themselves in a place called Rainbow Canyon, declaring their love for one another. Oh, drugs. Eventually his powers are restored and he goes back to Earth, but later Lyla would return in a story penned by Alan Moore in 1985 titled For the Man Who Has Everything, which saw Clark getting a dream machine plant as a gift, which granted one's deepest desires. And Superman's deepest desire? Well, to be a normal Kryptonian, living with his wife Layla and their son. It's kind of heartbreaking. Moving on to another woman with the initials LL, in at number 8, Lori Lemaris. Remember that time Superman hooked up with a mermaid? Yeah, that is an actual thing that happened. This one is a product of a 1959 issue of Superman, number 129, in a story titled The Girl in Superman's Past. Lori and Clark had met each other in college and the two had ended up in a relationship. It's also worth noting that Lori is in a wheelchair. When Lori tells him that she needs to return home and tries to break things off, Clark decides he wants to marry her and abandon being Superman for her. He ends up at her apartment where he sees that instead of a bed, she's got a tank of salt water. Therefore, she must be a mermaid. And he's actually right. Looks like that blanket that she was wheeling around with is hiding more than just legs. It's a whole f***ing mermaid fin. Imagine dating someone and they're like, surprise, I'm a mermaid. Oh. Borderline bestiality. Lori is actually from Atlantis, and the whole story was just a justification as to why Superman would not propose to Lois Lane. Also, I personally can't get over how fancy Lori's little shirt is that she wears while being a mermaid underwater. Very prude for a mermaid, isn't it? Although it was the 50s, so… She's just like committed to high fashion, swimming around in the water, doesn't care if it gets all dirty with the salt and debris. Moving on to number 7, Supergirl. Supergirl and Superman have a bit of a weird history together during the Silver Age, and despite being related, have been paired together romantically a handful of times, usually in one-off stories that turn out to have no real consequence. For example, this went down in Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, issue 55, a product of Otto Binders, who was notorious in the Silver Age for putting the Man of Steel in some pretty ridiculous scenarios. In this issue, we see Superman's teenage cousin appear to be married to her hunky relative. And even better, they've had 2 children. Luckily, this was not incest. Turns out red kryptonite was the real culprit here, with it having driven Supergirl insane. While insane, she decided that she wanted to screw with Lois Lane by deceiving her into thinking that she had lost Superman for good. Supergirl had also managed to hypnotize Superman so that he'd go along with it. And those super babies flying around? They're robots, because of course. This isn't the only time that Supergirl got kinda weird. We've got another instance coming up later on our list. But for now, in at number 6, Superwoman. This Superwoman is a Lois Lane alternate who hails from Earth 3, and played a substantial substantial role in the Forever Evil crossover. Technically, she is an amalgamation of both Lois and Wonder Woman, serving in the Wonder Woman role on the Crime Syndicate team. She and Ultraman are a couple, and she is pregnant with his child. Now for context, Ultraman, the Superman alternate from this Earth, is a complete a-hole, and his upbringing didn't help. Rather than the supportive and loving Kents, this version of his adopted parents were junkies, and he does not care for Superwoman at all. The only reason why he's with her is because she's the only one on this world capable of carrying his child. But joke is on Ultraman, because the unborn child is like a chess piece for Superwoman, who uses it to manipulate others, including Owlman, who she tells is the baby's father. Turns out the real dad though is Alexander Luthor, who is that world's Shazam, and the only hero from Earth 3. Regardless, she has slept around quite a bit, considering she was able to convince 3 separate men, including Superman/Ultraman of Earth 3, that their baby was theirs. Yikes. Oh. Moving on to number 5, the Female Furies. Taking a break from the comics and looking at the Superman animated series, let's look at an episode titled Legacy, or rather a 2-parter episode called Legacy that acted as the series finale. In it, Darkseid brainwashes Superman into believing that he was raised on Apokolips as his adoptive son rather than the Kent's adoptive son on Earth. He does this as a means of using the Man of Steel to conquer the universe for him. But when Superman makes his way to Earth to take it for his daddy dearest, his memories start to come back and conflict ensues. Now during his brainwash period, Kal-El gets to experience the perks of being the son of the ruler of Apokolips, which just so happens to be hooking up with these 3 ladies known as the Female Furies. They consist of Lashina, a sexually charged BDSM new god of Apokolips, Stompa, who seems to have a foot fetish, and Mad Harriet, who is an insane Wolverine-esque killing machine. And it's implied that they had a foursome with the Man of Steel. Darkseid even tells him to, I quote, "enjoy the fruits of your labor." Yeah. Little weird there for your adoptive dad to be like, go on, have sex with my lackeys. Ugh. Just strange dynamic. Maybe things on Apokolips are different, I don't know. In at number 4, Lola La. It's a case of those double L's again. Lola La is the dollar store version of She-Hulk, but with a flower bikini who doesn't speak English or a language that Superman understands. But she is the princess of a dinosaur island, so Superman decided that they should get hitched, and that he should alter his costume so that he never had to wear a shirt. Okay. This occurred in the 1991 Blackout Saga, in Volume 2 of Superman in issue 62. Now at the time, he was missing from Metropolis and the city was suffering from a power outage. Lois Lane manages to find him on this island right before Superman can tie the knot with Lola La. God, that name. Lois interferes and her and the She-Hulk wannabe get into a fight where their primary combat strategies involve pulling each other's hair. Yes, because that's how women fight, right? And what does the Man of Steel do? Well, he just watches them brawl. He considers breaking it up and then he just decides that he doesn't want to. That headband though. Oh. Moving on to number 3, Maxima. Maxima is technically a supervillain, but considering Superman has a thing for mortal Earth ladies, and we have 10 spots on our list, we're gonna just let that whole evil thing slide for this number. Besides, she ends up becoming good later anyway, joining up with the Justice League. Maxima was introduced in 1989's Action Comics issue 645. Hailing from the alien planet of Almerac, she came to Earth in search of a suitable mate, and set her sights on Superman, who was genetically compatible with her. She could give him children, something that, at the time, no Earth woman was capable of doing. That's actually like a common theme in mates for Superman that are not Lois Lane or Wonder Woman. Although technically Wonder Woman could totally birth his children. Despite this, Superman rejected her offer. The two would hook up though in The Adventures of Superman Annual 3 Volume 1 in 1991 in an Elseworlds story in which Lois Lane dies from carrying Superman's child, who literally kicks her to death from the womb out. Maxima becomes the perfect rebound for him and the two fall in love. In the main continuity though, Maxima these days isn't really interested in the Man of Steel, opting out for a Woman of Steel instead. More recently in the New 52, she was revealed to be gay, bonding with Supergirl after they met in Supergirl issue 36. She even develops feelings for her, and reveals that she was forced to leave her homeworld because her culture demanded that she find a heterosexual partner to mate with, which is a pretty good way to revise a hero whose whole shtick has literally been about trying to procreate with Superman. Very two-dimensional. But now she's a character who is more three-dimensional and gay. And number 2, Luma Lynai. Luma Lynai was introduced in 1962's Action Comics issue 289 in a story titled Superman's Super Courtship, and it was under weird circumstances. This is the whole Supergirl thing that we mentioned earlier. Supergirl decides one day that she feels bad about Superman being lonely, so some fun time travel hijinks ensue, with her trying to hook him up with famous women throughout history. When that fails, she manages to find a superwoman from another planet named Luma Lynai, because apparently Superman prefers women with names names that alliterate with the letter L. Exclusively. Maybe that's why Maxima just didn't fit the bill for him. Luma and Kal-El are totally smitten with each other, and he even talks about them getting married when she's like, I'll leave my home world for yours. But they realize that she loses her powers if she doesn't have the rays of her own sun reaching her. So they shed a tear and part ways. But what makes this story particularly fascinating, or cringeworthy, or steeped in Silver Age glory really, is the reason why Supergirl had selected Luma for Superman in the first place. It's because she is a Superwoman duplicate of Supergirl, basically an older version of herself, or of Superman's teenage cousin from a different universe. Supergirl gets all mopey over the fact that she failed to find him a marriage, and then Superman gets real creepy about it, grabbing her by the chin, telling her that if he ever did marry, it would be to, I quote, someone super and lovable like you. We can't marry because we're cousins. Though cousins can marry in certain countries here on Earth, we're both from planet Krypton, where the marriage of cousins was unlawful. What the f, Superman? And finally, in at number one pairing with Superman that isn't weird as f, Wonder Woman! Ah yes, the most obvious superhero pairing for the penultimate superhero, Wonder Woman and Superman. These two have had an on and on again relationship for a long time running, existing in both the main continuity and alternate timelines in the DC universe. The alternate timeline romances between the two are plenty. In Batman The Dark Knight Strikes Again, Frank Miller's sequel to The Dark Knight Returns, which paled in comparison to the original, in my opinion, features Clark and Diana in the future being an item and having a superpowered daughter named after his mom. In Kingdom Come, after Lois Lane was killed off by the Joker, Superman and Wonder Woman start a family together, with Bruce Wayne hanging out as an adorable old uncle at fam jams. There's even Superman Distant Fires, where we see Clark and Diana send their own son away from a post-apocalyptic Earth to another planet to save him from Earth's inevitable demise. But let's talk about the canon romance the two shared during the New 52 in 2012, when they were officially a couple. It was a big deal. They even got a steamy Justice League cover too. Needless to say, it did not last though. Teardrops. Alright, there we have it, friends. Who do you think Superman should hook up with if he wasn't with Lois Lane? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know your thoughts and feels. If you guys dug this video, you know what to do. Spread that love, hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more lists like this. We'd love it if you hung out with us some more. In the meantime, thanks for watching, friends. I'll catch you all in the next video. Sitting in his living room drinking a cognac? No, I always say cognac wrong, but also I don't know if that's what he's drinking. He's just drinking a strong drink. Oh, drugs. Gotta love them. Don't put that last bit in. He was able to convince 3 separate men. In it, Darkseid Although technically Wonder Woman could totally birth his children. I don't think she'd want to, but that's debatable. Maybe don't put any of that blah in. I'm just kind of rambling. Sometimes I have thoughts mid-video. I like to add them in. Sometimes they're In at number 2, Luma Lynai. When the two leave nope. Back we go.